Fantastic. I see that attendees are starting to come in. Thank you so much for being here. We're going to give it maybe 2-3 minutes just to let people arrive. In the meantime, if you could select your language channel on the menu, it should be at the bottom of your screen on the interpretation section. Like there's a little image on the screen for you to do it. That would be fantastic. If you could select your interpretation channel now. We'll start in 2 minutes to let people in. Thanks again for being here. If you feel like it, you can also introduce yourself in the chat. Let us know who you are, your affiliation, pronouns if you feel comfortable with that, and where you're based, maybe. And we'll start in 1-2 minutes just to let people in. Thank you so much. I see Alex Stevens has his hand raised. You have the floor, Alex. We're about to start, but let us know.
Let you know, Juan, the chat's disabled.
Oh, that is outrageous. I will fix it right now. Attendees can chat with absolutely everyone. We want this to be a comfortable, welcoming space. Thank you so much for letting me know, Alex. Cool. Well, it's 2 minutes in, so I think we'll just go for it. First of all, a reminder to put yourself, this webinar is going to be translated into Spanish, French, so we'll have it in English, Spanish, and French. Select the track that is the most convenient to you in the menu where it says interpretation. Hopefully you will have done that by now, so we'll just go ahead and start because we're 3 minutes in. Let me see how I change this. So yeah, again, welcome to everyone who is in the room. I'm Juan Fernández Ochoa, Campaigns and Communications Officer at the International Drug Policy Consortium. And we have organized this webinar. It's, I think, the 9th webinar that we organize around this issue or around the session of the CND throughout history. We do it every year. And basically, what we want to do is shed light on the key issues that are likely to structure the debates of the CND, discuss the resolutions that have been tabled, but also opportunities for civil society engagement. There's a Q&A section that you can use to drop any questions that you may have, and towards the end, we will address them as much as we can because we have such a short time. If we cannot address them, then we'll do our best to send you an email. So again, Q&A, very important. I'll just launch into it. So IDPC, who are we? We're a global network. We have 195 members of civil society. And what the organization and the network seek to do is repair the harms of punitive drug policies and promote just responses, because we believe that drug policies can and should promote human rights and social justice. We also promote civil society engagement. We think that's a healthy part of any democratic society. And so that's one of the reasons why we are here in this webinar. We're not going to discuss sort of like the basics of CND, what it is, why it exists, where it comes from. If you have interest in that, there is this video that you can access with the address on the screen, which explains all the basics of sort of what CND is and what it does. We're going to focus particularly on this session because it's a particularly full session. You'll see it in a second. So we'll start first, before launching into that, I just want to share with you the structure of this conversation. So first, I'm going to talk about what are some of the key information and moments in this year's CND. Then we're going to talk about the resolutions that have been tabled. Then we're very, very lucky to have members of our network who will discuss experiences on the ground. We have Paula Aguirre from ELEMENTA. We have Benjamin Tubiana-Rey from Fédération Addiction in France, and we have Ruby Lawlor from Youthwise. After their presentations, we're going to briefly talk about some resources that NGOs can use in order to follow this meeting, and then we'll go into the Q&A. So without much ado, first things first, how do you participate in this event? So you can do it in person or you can do it remotely, but you can only do so. I mean, of course, there are sections that are available to all online on UN Web TV, that's the plenary, and that's very lucky. It has been for the last 2 years that you can just follow the proceedings there. But if you want to actually participate in the proceedings, for example, taking the floor, you will need to register for this meeting. So registration is available to any NGO that has ECOSOC status. In order to do so, you need to send a message to the Secretariat of the governing bodies. I think the last time that I checked with them, they actually allowed for the registration to be directly on Indico. But just to be sure, we have sent our letterhead announcing who our delegation will be, both to the Secretariat and through Indico. But the Secretariat has confirmed that Indico suffices. This year, the chair of the plenary is going to be Ghana from the African group, and the vice chair will be Bangladesh from the Asia Pacific states. These roles rotate per regional group. So for example, last year, the chair of the plenary was Colombia, and the vice chair, so the person or the country delegation that is chairing the committee of the whole, was Ghana. So now Ghana has moved into chairing the plenary, and Bangladesh enters as vice chair, and so chairs the committee of the whole, which is where resolutions are discussed. First, we're going to talk about the high-level segment, because there's a high-level segment this year in relation to the midterm review that is being 19 declaration. And it's an interesting meeting. It's a rare meeting. This will happen only at the beginning, in the middle, and at the end of the 10-year cycle that we're in with regards to the global drug strategy. So it's a very interesting moment for international drug policy. This is sort of the calendar of the meeting. It's a little bit different to the usual sessions of CND. It will take place on the 14th and 15th of March, so we're very close. As you can see, there's going to be an extended plenary on Thursday. That's the little block that sort of escapes the schedule or agenda on your screen. We don't know when that's going to finish. It might extend until like 10 or 9 p.m. Hopefully not, because we like sleeping and having dinner, but clearly they expect very verbose interventions because it's a high-level segment. So there won't be a committee of the whole here. The committee of the whole discussing resolutions will start the following week, but there are these roundtables that I will explain in a second. There's also going to be a few side events that are all led by member states. There will be 1.5 hours instead of the 15 minutes that usually side events at the regular sessions are. So that's for the structure of the high-level meeting. And by the way, the high-level the fact that it's a high-level meeting, it just means that we expect to see high-level personalities from government. So the Secretary Blinken from the US is expected to be there. If I'm not wrong, Gustavo Petro, President of Colombia, is expected to be there. So there's quite a few ministerial and sort of higher level officials from government. That's something also to note, and adds to the sort of gravitas of this meeting. So let's go through the different items. So on Thursday, items 1 and 2 will start, and that's basically formalities. It will confirm who the officers are, what the agenda is. It will evoke the normative basis to run these sessions of the commission. There's not a lot of substance in these 2 items, but then we launched into the opposite, which is item 3, where the core of the substance of this meeting will be. As I said, it will be attended by high-level representatives, and we'll also hear from UN officials from UNODC, from INCB, and academic representatives from academy. The Youth Forum also, maybe we can talk about that a little bit later. Now, civil society is very unlikely that, civil society participation in this item will be, has been previously arranged. So it's very unlikely that we will be able to take the floor as civil society. I think the Vienna NGO committee will be the only civil society representative to take the floor. If I'm not wrong, they have coordinated civil society participation in the roundtables, but not for this item. Now, then there's going to be, or we should pay attention to the opening of the high-level segment, which crucially should be the moment where they adopt the outcome document of this meeting. As usual, CND is a little bit weird in that documents are agreed at the beginning instead of at the end because they have been previously negotiated. Of note, there is a likelihood that they won't be able to agree on an outcome document because there's huge tensions in ongoing negotiations. So it will be interesting to see if they manage to reach a consensus, which, as you know, is such a fundamental aspect of the Vienna-based bodies. In the general debate, member states will just state their claims and positions in relation to drug policy. Of interest, it will be curious or of note to see if countries talk about human rights, decriminalization, the death penalty, harm reduction, etc. So that's something that we're looking to see in there. And finally, there will be a reference to this initiative called Pledges for Action that have been launched, basically commitments, substantive commitments that member states have made in relation to the advancement of the global drug policy strategy. Civil society has also been invited to produce those pledges, but they won't be read. There's a likelihood that just one Vienna NGO committee and New York NGO committee negotiated pledge will be read out loud. So that's for the first day. And then on the second day, the chat will continue. The positions and general statements by member states about what their sort of positioning is will continue on Friday. And that's basically what will happen during the high level segment. Countries only, member state representatives only have 5 minutes, even if they're high level. This is moving. Then that's for the plenary. Now we're talking about the roundtables. They will be thematic roundtables. So one will be about taking stock, and the idea is to look at what has been achieved over the past 5 years in relation to the global aid strategy. These roundtables, and the other one will be about the way forward. So what to expect, or how do we make sure that that strategy is implemented towards 2021. These roundtables will be introduced by UNODC. They will be co-chaired by Bangladesh and Slovenia. And basically, they're structured around a panel that has 4 nominated representatives per regional group and 1 civil society member in the panel. It may include up to 2 UN system representatives, so it will be interesting to see how HCHR and WHO participate in these roundtables and the kinds of things that they will say, as well as our civil society colleagues, of course. These roundtables, these panels will be followed by interactive discussion where civil society can take the floor, but they have only 3 minutes to do so, and this has been coordinated in advance by the Vienna NGO Committee and the New York NGO Committee. Out of all of this, the roundtables, a non-negotiated chair summary will be presented to the plenary. This document has absolutely no legal status. It's just a summary of the discussions. I will now give the floor to my colleague Marie to sort of dig deep into what are some of the themes that we're going to see in the high-level segment. Marie, the floor is yours.
Hello, everyone. I am delighted to be with you all today. In my presentation, I will discuss 2 points. So the midterm review of the 2019 Ministerial Declaration. So I want to give you the most important political points. So for us, this is an opportunity to take stock of the current drug policies and to call for an approach that is not founded on prohibition, but rather on human rights, health, and development. And as usual, we have been very disappointed by the official processes. As we had anticipated, there has not been a real official evaluation of the current progress since the adoption of the Ministerial Declaration of 2019. And there has not been any clear acknowledgement from member states that the current approach is not working and is counterproductive. So from the beginning, we decided that we wanted to bring our input to the debate through a shadow report, which is actually making a real evaluation of what has been done and what has been achieved by taking stock of all the challenges that have been identified in the Ministerial Declaration of 2019. So here is the report. The shadow report is available in French and in several languages here. And the goal was to bring the voice of social society in these debates. So the Secretariat of the CND has decided not to give time to the interventions of civil society in the plenaries, but only in the roundtables. And of course, the 12 side events that are organized during the high-level segment are all organized by member states and not by the social society. So it means that the civil society's voice is very limited, and this is why our report is very important. Because it gives us an opportunity to say that we are here, that we are listening to what is happening, and that we know what works, what doesn't work, and the impact of the current policies on the affected communities. So I'm giving you also the link to the report, the Global Civil Society Report, for the 2024 midterm review of the Commission on Narcotic Drugs, the CND. So there will be a final document that will be adopted through a consensus, so the outcome document. And the negotiation of this document will be led by the president of the CND, who is the representative of Ghana in Vienna. And these negotiations are very delicate, very sensitive, because there is a lot of tension. And what we are seeing is a backlash in terms of human rights, promotion of drug abuse-free society, and a complete lack of acknowledgement that punitive policies have very negative effects on human rights. So this is completely inconsistent with the report that had been published by the High Commissioner on Human Rights. I put it also in the chat. It is a very good report, and it's completely disconnected between the reality on the ground and the debates that are happening in Vienna these days. But unfortunately, not many countries are willing to stay firm in the negotiations to reach an ambitious document and to break the consensus that is being established now in Vienna. So I will stop here, but feel free to make your question put your questions in the chat or in the Q&A feature.
Thank you so much, Marie. So yeah, that wasn't very hopeful, but we moved from the midterm review and the high-level session to the regular part of CND. This will be a little bit more familiar to the people in this call. Just for a reminder, this is how the calendar will look. Every day there's a plenary in parallel to the committee of the whole, apart from some exceptions there, which we'll discuss. And then side events happen on the constant. We have progressively more side events through the history of CND, so that will be interesting. And I will go into further detail in just a second. So let's go through the different items of the regular segment or the regular part. As you know, or as I mentioned, items 1 and 2 and 3 have been opened already, but there's a likelihood that items 1 and 2 will be restated, just to say that the officers are so-and-so and the agenda will be so-and-so. But crucially, according to the official agenda that is available until now, item 3 will not continue here. So like there will not be a general debate, to my knowledge, at the opening of the plenary session of the regular segment, because the general debate will have happened during the high-level segment. So we'll jump straight into item 4, which will discuss the budget and programmatic work and staff composition of the different bodies that form the architecture of drug control of the UN. So that will be relatively boring. The only opportunity that the only interesting thing in this item to us, I guess, to a certain extent, is highlighting concerns about the failures of UNODC to promote harm reduction, decrim human rights. It is usually not a very dynamic item, so just putting that out there. Then we'll move to item 5, which is quite substantive on the implementation of international drug control treaties. A key highlight is that this will be the official start of the WHO ECDD procedure to perform its review of the status of the coca leaf. Bolivia has triggered this process with the aim of removing the coca leaf from Schedule 1 of the 1961 Single Convention and make sure that they're able to deschedule coca domestically also. It seems that there will be a vote this morning. So the Committee of the Whole appears to be suspended during this moment because the plenary as a whole, CND, which has the power to schedule substances, will consider new substances to be scheduled. It's a benzodiazepine, a synthetic opioid, 2 stimulants, and 1 dissociative. I cannot pronounce any of those names because, as usual, they become longer and longer as the informal market tries to avoid is this cat and mouse game of prohibition. No, so we have new substances to be scheduled here, as well as precursors under the 1988 convention. So the vote in the morning seems likely. In the afternoon, this item is probably give rise to discussions about the different challenges that the scheduling system faces, more information sharing, more international cooperation, etc. And of course, the INCB will provide an update of their work. And as part of that, there will be a discussion also of the availability and access to controlled medicine. So it's an important document. And maybe, who knows, maybe there will be discussions also here in relation to, for example, legal regulation, if countries feel bold, but I'm not sure about that. Then we'll move to item 6, which will follow up on all commitments made and contained in the 2019 Ministerial Declaration. I missed a word in there. So most likely this item will just report on the high-level segment, what was discussed in the high-level segment, as well as the thematic discussions that have been organized every autumn by CND around this work plan of I don't know if you've seen it, but CND has been organizing thematic sessions on each one of the challenges that were identified as sort of pending challenges for the international community in relation to drug control in the Ministerial Declaration. So this will probably sort of allude or refer to that work, and also specifically discuss the impact of HIV and blood-borne diseases, which is an opportunity to, for example, highlight the Global AIDS strategy here, which I'm not going to say mandates, but encourages countries to adopt decriminalization. So it's going to be an interesting topic. Item 7 is important in relation to system-wide coherence. We'll hear hopefully about the UN Common Position on Drug Policy, the work of its task team, which is led by UNODC, but as many of us know, that leadership has been a little bit lacking. We hope to hear also about the OHCHR report that Marie just mentioned, as well as the work of UNAIDS in terms of harm reduction and decrim in particular. Then item 8 will be reports of the meetings of the heads of national drug law enforcement agencies. So basically cops congratulating each other about their successes in drug control. It's not a particularly lively item. Then we'll move to item 9, which is very important because there's high resistance to the SDG agenda at CND. So it will be an opportunity for countries to speak up on the need to align the development and drug control agendas. We'll move to the final day, which is Friday, and then we'll have the provisional agenda for the next CND and any other business. If the meeting ends early, the session will be adjourned until resolutions at the CAO finish being negotiated, and then reconvene in order to adopt the final, the report of the 66th session, which is the last item. So that's for the plenary session. In terms of the kinds of issues and dynamics that might, and we expect will play a role in the meeting, there's the Global Coalition to Address Synthetic Drug Threats, which the US has been organizing. It will be interesting to see how they present that initiative as not something parallel, but convergent to the agenda of CND. That's going to be an interesting one. Of course, the question of the rescheduling of the, or descheduling of the coca leaf, we expect a lot of interesting debate around that. The OHCHR report that Marie was just mentioning, we hope a lot of mentions to it and it to sort of spark debate around about the direction of international drug policies. Ongoing aggressions in Ukraine and Palestine by Russia and Israel, respectively, will be also maybe playing a part, I hope, in this plenary. And finally, calls for sort of like a total system reboot or transformational change. As I said, Gustavo Petro will be at the high-level segment, but we expect countries to more vociferously contest the status quo. So that's something to look forward to. Now I will give the floor to my colleague Marie to discuss the resolutions that will be discussed at the Committee of the Whole.
So the resolutions this year, there will be 4 of them. They are not online yet, but you can see the texts of the resolutions that are on the UNODC website. So I put them in the chat. You have to take into consideration, before I go into details on each resolution, is that it's very likely that the difficulties that these governments have to find a consensus are also going to be reflected in the adoption of the resolutions. So the negotiations will be very long, very difficult, and mostly informal. So the first resolution is on alternative development, and it's presented each year by Germany, Peru, and Thailand. So last year, the text was a mix of very progressive and very problematic paragraphs, but there were interesting points on indigenous people's rights, on gender. So we will see if the resolution this year will be able to strengthen this. And so the key issue will be to try to avoid the inclusion of the most problematic paragraphs. So now there's another one. To promote rehabilitation and recovery programs. That one is presented by Chile. So the idea is to promote the access to voluntary treatment and to make connections between the recognition of communities and civil societies in service provision. Also preventing stigma, harm reduction, and to respond to the needs of marginalized groups. For the 4th resolution, so this one is promoted by Belgium in the name of the European Union and Ivory Coast. And Belgium is one of the countries that have proposed some resolutions frequently on the access to essential medication, but this one is interesting because it will have a focus on children, and usually the ones that have connection with children the resolutions that are related to children usually at the CND are only on prevention. So we will see, this will be interesting. And now the L5 resolution, so the last one is prevented by the United States, and it's obviously on overdose. And obviously this is a very welcome resolution, especially due to the overdose epidemic that is happening now. It will be very controversial. And what is interesting is that the United States have chosen to include the word harm reduction in a title of their resolution. And this term has never been in an approved resolution of the CND. And usually it was the United States that was blocking the use of this word, and so that's very interesting. So now we can only base ourselves off of the titles because the texts of the resolutions are not online yet. So we will have more to say afterwards.
Thank you so much, Marie. So yes, the next moment or the next things to discuss are the fact that there will be more than 150 side events. Last year we had 155, if I'm not wrong. They keep growing. This becomes a big conference on drug policy. Really interesting side events. I think I don't have a final list yet. Next week we will. But the IDPC network is organizing dozens of side events, and we'll make sure to promote them, of course, within our network and beyond. There's also informal NGO dialogues with heads of UN agencies and drug control bodies. So there will be one with the INCB, one with UNODC, one with CND, and one with those agencies. As you can see, the last one, which is with WHO, OHCHR, UNAIDS, and UNDP. Those haven't, the schedule for those haven't been determined. And actually what I'm sharing with you is tentative because they haven't been yet agreed. So watch this space, basically. There will be two civil society briefings at the beginning of each meeting. Those are interesting because basically the Vienna NGO committee will give us information about how best for civil society to engage with the meeting. There will also be an annual General Assembly of the Vienna NGO Committee and board elections. The IDPC network, of course, will be eagerly following these elections. The Vienna NGO Committee is the main liaison body for civil society with the UN system on drug control, as well as the New York NGO Committee. So it's incredibly important for us to be present there and active. And without any further ado, I want to give the floor to my colleague Paula Aguirre, who will discuss her experience in navigating this space for advocacy and networking. Paula, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Juan. Hi, everyone. I'm going to speak in Spanish. So I work with ELEMENTA Human Rights, which is a human rights organization working in Colombia and Mexico. I'm the director here in Colombia. And I also work with IDPC as a representative of Latin America. I'm going to go over my experience very quickly. First of all, my experience with the CND, the possibility of participating as civil society in the CND and how our experience has been with that. And third, the different advice and suggestions we could give to people in this space. So first of all, in 2019, I was able to attend the CND, which was just as important as this year because they also had a high-level segment. And from Colombian society, I was responsible for drafting of a report on the situation of drug policy in Colombia to that date under the government. of Nougier, who was very right-wing, very repressive, and has continued to have discourse until today of blaming people who use drugs and criminalizing them. And while I was drafting that report, because of this, I was able to attend the CND with the help of IDPC. With IDPC's help, people who had never been able to attend were able to do so. And I was there in person. And during that opportunity, we had an introductory session where they explained absolutely everything to us, step by step of the CND, its importance. And we couldn't have had a better introduction at that point, because in terms of explaining to us how important the space is, it's also important to understand our significance and the importance of our participation as the civil society. And in terms of how it influenced our work, our experience at the CND, I don't think it's that easy to explain in words because it's been a huge influence. In that first session of the CND in 2019, we were able to meet, have an informal meeting with the national government of Colombia, and we were able to put on the table our recommendations for the drug policy at the time. And that was going to be exactly the position that was going to be presented to the CND, what the different priorities were, what the overall situation and overview was. So it was very good to be able to have that meeting with the government. And they've actually contacted us directly and other civil society organizations in Colombia to have a presence there so that we could explain our point of view, what we think our priorities are, what the priorities of the government should be, what the priorities of the civil society should be, what they could support us with, and basically a general overview of how we could be supported during these dialogues and sessions. And in terms of international advocacy, we also have worked with different organizations and different institutions on the state level to be able to have our input as Colombia on the international stage, and when it comes to drug policy at the national level. Also, we have had an amazing alliance that we've achieved here in Colombia, where we carried out a mapping project, and we were able to strengthen our participation in the CND and also strengthen our strategy for having a presence at the CND. I don't know how much time I have left. I think I have about 2 minutes. So lastly, the experience at the CND also gave us the opportunity to dialogue with other spaces of the UN. For example, last year, we were able to attend a space of the Human Rights Council, and we were there and able to participate and to give a speech on international drug policy. And even though we see how they move slowly year by year in Vienna, we think that Vienna needs Geneva much more. Geneva needs much more, and there needs to be much more change when it comes to international drug policy, and it needs to happen much more quickly. And in terms of logistics, I think that the possibility to advocate as civil society is extremely important. It's something that takes constant energy and effort, but when we have good colleagues and people to work with, it's much easier. And in terms of logistic things, the lunch is very good. So you need to get there at a good time to get good seating. And Vienna, well, it's very expensive. So as a Colombian as well, I would tell you that the coffee is horrible. I don't recommend drinking coffee there. And so that's the end of my speech on this.
Thank you so much, Paula. So much in there about monitoring, about accountability, networking and collegiate support, governmental engaging, promoting system work coherence. Thank you so much for all of those insights. Because of time, I'm going to go straight into Benjamin, who will also share his experience with the CND. Thank you so much, Benjamin.
Okay, my name is Benjamin. I'm responsible for advocacy in Fédération Addiction, which is an organization of drug professional, healthcare professionals in France. So most of our work is based on professional best practices on harm reduction, etc. So our positions on drug policy are based on our professional practices, and we see that repressive policy have consequences in terms of I know nothing about UN policies and UN processes before going to Vienna, and it was very instructive to learn a bit about diplomacy and discover this new world. And we're realizing that a lot of this is 50-year-old men with suits and ties who discuss these issues, very disconnected from the reality on the ground. And it's a bit scary to realize that global policies are discussed by these kinds of people. It's very interesting to see what's happening in the committee of the whole. Some things are being discussed in a very striking way, like discussing the commas and the vocabulary that is being used. The vocabulary that is being used that doesn't mean much. For example, the word addiction is always translated as toxicomanie in French, which is a very, very derogatory word in French that doesn't mean much and that is not used by governments in French-speaking countries. So they should translate it as addiction, which is more neutral. So it's very interesting to go see what the position of your own country is and to see the way that your government speaks when it is at the UN. And for example, in terms of France, France is a very repressive country, but the positions that they take are very empty and very, they're not even defending harm reduction policies, for example, like Switzerland, Canada, or the US do it. So it's interesting to see with the relationships that we have with our governments. You can go see your governments, and you can go see your government and tell them, kind of monitor them and watch what they are doing. We see what you are doing, and you see what you are not doing, what you said you would do. And it's also legitimacy when you are participating in UN processes. You can use it as legitimacy in your own country then. So, for example, we have shared some contributions and to have influence in your advocacy work in your own country, because you can say what is being done in your country is being monitored. But it's very exciting to meet with other NGOs. And thank you for, I really thank the IDPC to organize these kinds of events, because we see people who are in most difficult situations compared to our country, and who are still fighting and still standing. And it's also very inspiring to see the countries that have managed to reach better conditions than we do, and who are continuing to advance. So it's really good to go to as many side events as you can. and it's difficult because there are so many events and so many things. So it's hard to know which ones to go to. Also, the committee of the whole is really interesting. And as Paula said, the food is good, but it's really hard to get a table. So you have to go early to get a table at the cafeteria. And it's hard to be able to both have lunch and also attend the side events.
Ruby, can you hear me?
Yes, sorry, the
Oh,
translator
fantastic.
was still speaking, so I couldn't hear you.
Right, no worries. Sorry.
Okay, hi. So hi everyone, thanks so much IDPC for inviting me to speak. I'm speaking on behalf of Youth Rise, which is an international network of young people who use drugs and young people affected by punitive policies worldwide. And also kind of speaking with the hat of the Paradigma Coalition, which I'll mention a bit in a minute. So I started attending CND. The first one was 2020, was that weird one that happened 1 week before the whole world shut down. And that was in person, which was a really good opportunity to go and experience it. I studied international development, so I learned a lot about the UN, but I couldn't really see the human side of it. And I also learned nothing about the CND, that it was the other UN, it was Geneva UN, it wasn't Vienna UN. And yeah, so I got to attend and didn't really fully understand what was going on a lot of the time. I think that's often the first time you go to CND is trying to figure it out. And a recommendation right now is that you always ask questions. Like, you know, you've been prompted by Marie throughout this whole thing, ask questions, but then in person as well. It might look like everyone knows what's going on, but we've also all been there not knowing what's happening. And maybe there's something specific you want to ask about, please ask questions to any of us. And I'll continue to do the same as well. So yeah, so I attended 2020, and then in 2021 and 2022, it was online. So I attended online virtually, which was a very different experience, but also made it a more accessible experience for some people. It meant that more people could watch what was happening online and participate in side events who maybe couldn't have traveled to Vienna for this to happen. So yeah, online was an interesting experience. 2023 was when we came back strong and attended in person again. And it was a really impactful year, I think, for Youth Rise, because it allowed us to meet with stakeholders who we've been developing relationships with over time on emails or through different events that were happening online. And then kind of solidify these relationships through face-to-face conversations. So that being United Nations officials, UNODC officials, member states, delegation members, and also fellow NGOs as well, members in the same field as us. So I think it really allowed us to kind of hold accountable also the commitments that have been made in emails that maybe got lost over time, and really kind of finding these people in the line for coffee, or which I'm sure annoys them, but finding these people in different spaces and approaching them, people you wanted to take a project forward with, or you wanted to talk about a certain topic, like it was mentioned by the previous panelists. Really important you do so, and don't be afraid to go up to people and start those conversations. They're just people too, and we know more than them probably about the topic, so it's important that you bring it up. Let me think. So, okay, so to talk a little bit about Paradigma. Paradigma is a coalition of youth-led and youth-focused organizations working in the field of drug policy and human rights. It was launched in, I think it was 2016, as a result of the lack of youth participation and engagement at the UNGAS. But then since then, it's been active primarily in person at the CND. Or in some other conferences that happen throughout the year. But primarily the work of the Paradigma Coalition is uniting the voice of young people who use drugs and young people affected by punitive policies in these CND spaces. So it's really a fantastic time for us all to come together. In the same way, it's good to network with everyone and all organizations. It's really a strong point when we come together and we strategize before CND and during, to make sure that the youth voice
is not silenced by the UNODC and member states in the way it always is. And instead, we are vocal and we're there and we're in every side event. We're making statements at every opportunity and we're really coordinating our efforts. Quite similarly to how IDPC coordinates efforts, we do the same thing with Paradigma. And we have usually had a strong voice around the Youth Forum, which is the UNODC's initiative. I don't want to spend too long on this. I talk about it a lot. We all, the Paradigma, talk about it a lot. But we're basically trying to bring a reform to the UNODC Youth Forum because it's hailed as being the voice of young people at the CND. And they're allowed to make a statement, although on the last day, but they make a statement, but all they've learned all week is prevention. And they learn about prevention programs of UNODC, and it's not a broad discussion. It's not even particularly a discussion. It's more so learning about a program of UNODC. So we really try to push for this to be changed, for us to be invited to also speak to these young people as peers, or to include us in consultations as well. And so some of the advocacy that resulted from 2023 was around getting a pre-CND consultation on young people who use drugs. And we managed to have something along the lines of that in November last year, which came from a conversation I had directly with someone from within UNODC in person, and then sparked this fantastic moment for us. And it was a big moment for our advocacy to have a consultation with academics, UN bodies, and civil society, us youth-led organizations, talking about the challenges that we face as young people who use drugs and our recommendations for change. And then I've been given the opportunity as well, bouncing from this conversation back last year, to now speak at the pre-CND consultations as we had requested. So it's kind of that in-person engagement and follow-up. And another recommendation is make sure you follow up with the people you talk to in person, try to get their card, and then try to bring the conversations forward. Let me think, is there anything else huge? I mean, for Paradigma, something I have to mention is that we have just relaunched our engagement. So the way that we are going to interact and coordinate, and there's a lot of movement happening with the Paradigma Coalition at the moment. So if there's any young people here or anyone who has young people within your organizations that could maybe represent your organization and the youth voice there, please get in contact with us. It'd be really fantastic to have them join the coalition. And we're currently writing, and it's finalized this week, the Paradigma Common Position, which is a really fantastic document that lays out all of our positioning on the challenges associated with the war on drugs and the punitive policies, our commitment ourselves for the change we want to make, and then also the recommendations for change. It's quite a comprehensive document, and a statement version of it will be delivered by Charity Monorang from SSDP International on behalf of Paradigma at the Way Forward roundtable of the high-level segment. So this is a really good, big success for us. We're very excited to kind of shout and scream, saying we are the young people, as they continue to tell us that they know what's best and then wage the war in our name. So I think they're my main points. I had a few fun logistical points. I know the coffee is awful, so you might as well go for the vending machine version and not wait in that line. It skips the queue and it's cheaper. So don't be afraid to give in to the coffee machine vending machines. Plug in your devices at every opportunity you get. I got stuck on this awful bicycle last year in the middle of the coffee area of the CND building with some stranger hysterically laughing, pedaling, trying to charge our laptops before a side event. So plug in your devices at every opportunity so you don't run out. Prepare for the airport-like security check. Take breaks in the smoking area downstairs if you want to get some air. It's freezing and it's like a wind tunnel, so bring layers even if you're warm up in the building. And then my last one again is to just ask questions. Yeah, please ask questions. People are afraid of doing that too often, and the person might have the same question as you and you can go find the answer somewhere together. So yeah, thanks so much for inviting me, and join the Paradigma Coalition if you're a young person or no one.
Thank you so much for that, Ruby. I think that highlights that it's not just a space for networking, advocacy, accountability, but also a place of organizing. We have this wonderful opportunity of meeting colleagues with whom to conspire in that space, and we should definitely use it. So just to finish, I wanted to mention some key resources that may help you navigate CND. There's the official CND documentation. So if you go UNODC, CND, meetings in the current year on Google, you'll find this meeting with the official documentation. There's a Vienna NGO committee guide that is produced every year, and we expect to see it this year again, although the website, it hasn't been produced yet. And then IDPC updates its own website on the Commission on Narcotic Drugs. The recording of this event will be here, as well as many other recommendations that will support your navigation of this meeting. I also recommend downloading the CND app, which this year will be only available online, but it's pretty helpful because you can tell who's speaking to which item, which resolution is being negotiated, what is the status of all of these resolutions currently, what side events are happening. There's a map of the place. There's a database on previously agreed language. So it's a treasure trove of resources to navigate the meeting. I encourage you to check it out. Other key resources out there that, of course, I want to share. IDPC produces monthly alerts, and around CND, we do special alerts with sort of like all of this information that you need. And then we produce daily digests where we update you daily on what is the situation at the CND. So you can subscribe to those. If you're interested, just drop me an email. There's a CND blog, which we type in real time. It's a real-time transcriptions of the event. And yeah, we move to the questions. I know that some of the questions that people have been dropping in the Q&A have already been discussed. Somebody in the Q&A is asking suggestions for accommodation close to the event. I don't know if anyone wants to jump in, discuss the practicalities of that.
I mean, I've been going to CND for a very long time, so I can tell you.
Please.
I mean, check out Airbnbs, especially if you can share with other colleagues. It's usually much cheaper than a hotel. That being said, of course, the prices have increased a lot over the past few years, but it's still better than hotels. If you can stay a little bit closer to the center, because the Vienna building, the UN building area is absolutely miserable. There is no restaurants, there is no cafes. It's just, it's not great. So, and it's not particularly more expensive to go a little bit closer to the center. And the metro works incredibly well.
So I don't see any open questions at the moment, and we are literally 2 minutes from time. If you have any other questions, please do not hesitate to write to us. I think I've put the address. No, I haven't put the address. I'm going to put it now on the screen. That's our address. If you have any questions, please, as I said in the chat, there's no silly questions. This is an incredibly arcane, obscure, opaque system. So anything that we can do to support each other in navigating it is good. Thank you so much for attending today. And yeah, it's been a pleasure. Hope to see some of you in Vienna. And yeah, again, have a great day. We'll stop this and stop that. Thank you, everyone. We'll close the webinar now. Take care.
Bye. See you soon. Bye all. Thank you.